Before the video begins, I just want to let you all know that I have a Patreon now. So if you want to go ahead and support that, link is in the description below. No egg this time? Let me... Huh. No. None. Why is it always Rika episodes that I don't get eggs? Well, welcome again to Wonder Egg Retrospective, the show where I take a look back at the entirety of Wonder Egg Priority and regurgitate my thoughts and opinions about it all back to you. It seems that we are nearing the end of the road already. Yeah, we're halfway done with the show. And oh boy, what a second half. Do we mean that in a good way or a bad way? Well, I can't say yet. We gotta celebrate a birthday! The in-universe birthday of Rika Kawaii. With another introspective deep dive. God, every time with her! Rika Kawaii is emotional whiplash when we first meet her. You either feel really bad for her situation, or you kinda wish she'd stop talking since she's making the situation only worse, or it's just straight up being a Debbie Downer and not helping at all. But this is her in-universe birthday, so there has to be some sort of change she makes, right? Well, yeah, actually. And yes, it does take the entire episode to get this theme across. Because outside of the opening scene, which does actually show a little bit more about certain aspects of Rika, it is another instance of Rika proceeding to use her friends as a backhand resource to try and fix her own life, as well as venting out her problems onto others because she's afraid of being genuine or losing someone else important to her. As somehow, mind you, she has pictures of her mom and the possible fathers that could be hers. Now, mind you, the girls did kind of sort of enable her to do this, since they did tell her that if she has any problems herself, she can tell them. But I don't think they expected something like this. And this is a neat detail, but Ai's the first one to notice that this whole thing feels off. Like, whether it be her calling out her mom, or just like this random need to find out who her father is. And there's also some lines that she says about where she hates her mom, but she stays with her anyway. And even Neiru points this out, almost as if Rika's being hypocritical!
You really think someone would do that?
And in typical Rika fashion, she runs away from having to face her problems, but is able to gain solace from Ai. The only person who realistically has really been the only person she's been able to confide to, because she isn't judgmental or confrontational. But then, everything after the food court scene just hits you. So I honestly think after this point, the episode only goes up in quality and storytelling, especially for what is basically an exposition sequence. But it is set up as a consented venting moment for Rika, with the lovely therapist Oto making her return. And although this may seem as a simple venting about bad parents, for Rika, it's a lot more, especially when considering her own mom, a constant drunk, using pleasure as an escape from the real-world problems she has, and that includes the truth about Rika's dad. She just says nothing. She was born from her, so shouldn't that be enough? Well, that's actually a very hurtful way to invalidate your child's feelings. I can see why Rika hates her so much and why she fears becoming her, as seen in the opening scene as she wipes off the lipstick she was going to wear for her birthday. Why look like the woman she hates and fears? It's why seeing her dad, even if a simple wish, it means so much to her. But yet, even when she was able to be this vulnerable to a friend, it isn't enough. It can't be enough. She caused someone's passing and is unable to be honest with no one else but Ai, because she's so afraid of seeing her own hubris, whether it be through Neiru's confrontational side or through Momoe's logic. And even though she makes attempts, they fall short. And she's stuck with an uncaring mother with a wish that will never be fulfilled. And so with nothing else to do and no one else to confide to, what else to do but drop dead? And on her birthday of all days. but she can't do it. And when she looks back at the past scars that never fade, she's reminded of the pain she's inflicted or suffered herself. She can't bring herself to move the blade, especially with Mannen around. So when she tries to put him back, he doesn't go. He stays. For her. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about the commanders. Yeah, they're pretty neat. They're a great upgrade to the already simplistic weapons, and are essentially this show's marketable mascots. This is technically a magical girl show after all. I didn't mention them last episode since I really just wanted to focus on the characters at that point. And also, wow, Wonder Egg really likes their cults, huh? One indirect reference in episode 5 and an actual in-universe cult in episode 7. But what makes this cult enemy a threat is not the actual leader itself, but the follower. And this is a common thing for cult members to do, to show relatability and understanding through suffering, to show that they were suffering as well until they joined the cult. And for a moment, Rika allows herself to give up, to let go, to no longer feel this grief. Yet, Mannen saves her from this fate, like a son to a mother. And she gets back up, and lands the finishing blow, finding reason in living. Whether it be to see Chiemi or her father again, or being with her friends, or being a mother to Mannen, she'll know she'll get hurt, but she'll keep on living. And at the end, Rika actually takes a moment to come to the fact that she's been a terrible mother. She's drunk, but not as drunk. And even though she says that, even though she knows that Rika may leave her, Rika says, not yet. As Rika's dad said to her, you gotta protect your mom. Yeah, I love this episode. It's one of my favorites. Rika unironically has one of her best moments here, and is able to do a full 180 as a character, and is even able to be finally herself with others. Not just no longer the facade, no longer the smug, brash, hubris-filled Rika Kawaii, but the well-tempered, soft-spoken, and occasionally outspoken Kawaii Rika. Look at that! Good for her! Man, I am so glad Rika's finally able to be herself, move past her pain, and learn to appreciate her life. So, who's next? Finally! This title is not hyperbole. This is literally the setup for the episode. But that's not to say that it's a bad thing. In fact, I think it helps with the world building and how exactly Neiru goes with her dreams, as we've really only been given bits and pieces, like how Neiru has a special technology to look into her dreams for data. That's a little suspicious. That's a little weird. But I'm sure it's just to make these deep dives easier. And we also learned that Neiru's part of this really big team of smart people known as Plati. Also, she says some really suspicious things about how she was born and humankind and existentialist stuff and all that, but I'm sure it's nothing. And overall, this downtime is just really sweet, as the introspection actually takes a back seat just to show the girls have fun and eat takoyaki, talk about their future, and even show the current development of Rika as a person, and Neiru's hoarding a dead albino. Well, at least this dream sequence doesn't make me want to start questioning my existence. But I don't think we need a sequence into part 2B to talk about it. We can talk about it here, or at least a certain point. That albino in the pod? That's Kotobuki Awano, Neiru's first friend, and Kotobuki herself was a little quirky, really having a thing for nearby death experiments and such. And look where she ended up. Dead. Like Icarus, she flew too close to the sun. Although now that she's back in this egg girl form, she actually doesn't mind it. In fact, being stuck in this kind of limbo state makes her research more interesting to her, as she's found proof of parallel world or world lines. I'm gonna keep a pin on that just in case. There's a lot more she says that I find interesting, but I'm keeping all that on a pin for later. For now, I think it's time we shed a spotlight on the true purpose of this episode: the humanity of Neiru Aonuma. Charles Baudelaire once said this: "It is the hour to be drunken, to escape being the martyred slaves of time. Be ceaselessly drunk, on wine, on poetry, or on virtue, as you wish." If the show at this point, 8 episodes in, hadn't made itself apparent already, Neiru doesn't exactly know what it means to be human, although for a moment you see sparks of it come out of her here and there, mostly when it involves the full cast or one-on-one conversations. But outside of that, she feels stoic, emotionless, almost like a robot. But I'm sure that's just also hyperbole. But when you see her with Kotobuki, you see her almost have some sort of resentment for herself, being unable to help Kotobuki, and also resentment for her, as she left her alone. She didn't take consideration for her feelings. But Kotobuki responds in possibly one of the best ways ever. "It's fine. You made new friends, right? You're softer than you used to be. You make connections with people. That's a wonderful thing. Treasure them." Kotobuki knew this would happen. How could it not? She knew she would miss her tons, even if she shows it at first with annoyance. But Kotobuki also gives her the most chill reality check ever, to simply move on without her. Even if she won't meet the new friends that Neiru made, she'll meet them in another world. But the first step to moving on is to remove her life support, to let her finally leave this physical limbo. And for a moment, you think she's actually gonna do it. But, like reasonable people, the others chime in and wonder if this is something she really wants to do, or even if it's the right thing to do. And even Rika asks if this is even something she wants herself. Rika is being reasonable. Let that set in. And yet, Neiru doesn't really listen. Neither does she write it off. She just stays silent. That is until Ai comes into the room. And yet when she arrives there, Neiru couldn't do it. She can't let go. Even though that's what Kotobuki wanted. But yet, Ai is able to emphasize. She felt the same for Koito in a fortune-telling game. They don't really know why they did what they wanted them to do. But they can make their own reason why. That's what fantasy is. With Ai Neiru, it's fantasy. And just like that, they're able to let go. I really do like this scene for what it's able to do both for Ai and Neiru. For Ai, the first simple desire to see Koito again faded over time. It was a fantasy that drove Ai into getting Max. But as the series goes along, she maturely begins to realize that this girl she's trying to save may not exactly be who she thought she was. So now she has a much more mature wish, to simply understand why Koito died, whether it be because of her or not. Neiru, who simply bought eggs just to soothe the scar's wound, began more complex desires to get a friend who already passed and wants to do so naturally. But as complex as those desires are, the decision to let her go is even more complex. Kotobuki may be gone, but the things she showed her will never leave. The feeling of companionship, the feeling of enjoying things with others, the feeling of being human. These once two polar opposites have now become companion pieces for the other, thanks to what they are both able to give. Neiru to Ai, the feeling of having a friend you see on the regular and want to spend time with. And Ai to Neiru, it's the feeling of understanding the importance of having a friend. Someone that you can lean on, help as they helped you, and to give you a push through the most difficult decisions. I guarantee you, if I were to do a ranking of all the episodes, these 2 episodes would definitely be in the top 5. But yeah, that was After School at 14 and A Story No One Knows. I really enjoyed writing for these, as they are some of my favorites. But what's next? I'm really curious. What's next? Oh no.